The SEAL lead froze in the doorway. A woman was calmly cleaning a Barrett .50, every part laid out like she was preparing for surgery. And then someone whispered the words that made his blood run cold. She's the one who made a 3,200-meter kill. You're watching the story Scape, where hidden legends step out of the shadows. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Commander Harris had walked into more armories than he could count. Most of them were the same, silent, metallic, the faint smell of oil and sweat lingering in the corners. But that morning as he pushed open the steel door, he didn't expect the sight that froze him in place. A woman sat alone at the table, head slightly bowed, hair pulled back in regulation style. Before her, the Barrett .50 lay in pieces, spread across the steel like relics of a ritual. Each part was cleaned and arranged with perfect symmetry. She wasn't just maintaining a weapon, she was performing something closer to a ceremony. Her name tag read Keller. Harris remembered her name from a line buried deep in the personnel roster, just another staff sergeant attached to the unit, marked as sniper qualified. Nothing in the files had suggested anything beyond that, but the way she moved told a different story. Her hands flowed across the rifle with the calm rhythm of someone who wasn't learning anymore. She was remembering. "Barrett maintenance at this hour?" Harris asked, his voice low but carrying through the empty space. She didn't flinch. "Beasts don't wait for sunrise, sir." It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Flat, calm, not an ounce of deference. Most soldiers stiffened when a SEAL commander walked in. She just kept working, inserting the bolt carrier with a precise snap, eyes never leaving the task. Harris studied her in silence. He had spent years around shooters who bragged about their skills, who decorated their rifles with pride and ego. Keller's movements weren't about pride. They were about survival. Every action was stripped of wasted energy, as if the rifle was already part of her body. Behind Harris, footsteps echoed. Specialist Carter, barely 20, all swagger and nerves, wandered in, smirking when he saw Keller hunched over the Barrett. "Morning, Keller. Still polishing the big gun? Don't wear it out before you actually use it." Keller's jaw tightened, but her hands never faltered. She secured the optic mounts, double-checked the receiver. Only then did she lift her gaze. Her eyes were green, steady, the kind of gaze that could pin a man to the wall. "Gotta keep it ready," she said evenly. "Never know when you'll need to reach farther than you think." Carter chuckled. "Yeah, well, long shots like that, best leave those to the boys. We've actually got the experience." The words hung heavy in the air. Harris felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He'd seen plenty of casual dismissals, but this one had the edge that corrodes unit cohesion. He opened his mouth to cut in. But Keller beat him to it. She tilted her head, that faint ghost of a smile at her lips. "Experience," she repeated, letting the word linger like a blade. "That's an interesting perspective." Something in her tone sliced the smirk off Carter's face. He shifted his weight, suddenly less sure of himself. Harris almost smiled. He recognized that edge, the quiet ones, the ones who didn't need to raise their voice. Those were the ones to watch. As Carter muttered an excuse and left, Harris leaned closer to Keller. "How long have you been working that rifle?" 4 years, she replied, sliding the muzzle brake into place. M24 and sniper school, M2010 after that. Barrett came before deployment. Her answers were clipped, factual, no bragging, no elaboration. But her tone, it was the tone of someone who had tested every word under fire. Harris recognized it because he'd heard it from the best operators in the field, the ones who didn't talk about their kills, the ones who carried them in silence. He tried again. Seen much action with it? Keller paused, fingers resting on the receiver. For a moment, the silence stretched too long. Then she said, softly, "Enough to know what it can do when it has to." It was the understatement of the century, and it made Harris's skin prickle. He had a gut for people, for hidden talent. Something about her presence told him this woman wasn't just another sniper. She was hiding something, or someone was hiding it for her. What kind of soldier keeps her record buried so deep, even her commander doesn't know? The thought stuck with him as she locked the last piece into place and slid the rifle forward with deliberate care. When she finally looked at him, her eyes carried no apology, no hesitation, only the calm of someone who had lived far beyond what her file suggested. Harris gave a slow nod. "You handle that weapon like it's a part of you." For the first time, her lips curved into a real smile. Not warm, not mocking, just knowing. "Maybe it is, sir." Harris left the armory with a knot in his chest. He'd walked in expecting routine maintenance. Instead, he'd seen a soldier whose every movement screamed combat experience that didn't exist on paper. And he couldn't shake the whisper he'd overheard from another operator in the corridor just minutes later. "She's the one who made that 3,200-meter kill." 2 days later, the whispers about Staff Sergeant Keller had already spread through the forward operating base. Most dismissed them as campfire exaggerations. A 3,200-meter kill? Impossible. A woman carrying the Barrett like it was an extension of her arm? Unlikely. Soldiers gossip when they're bored, and war zones had a way of turning rumors into legends. Commander Harris wasn't so sure. He kept replaying that morning in the armory, the way Keller's hands moved with an ease that came only from thousands of repetitions under pressure. The silence when she spoke about her experience. The chill in her eyes when she stared down a younger soldier who had tried to belittle her. There was no bravado there, just certainty. He didn't have to wait long to find out the truth. The first call came in just before noon, a convoy ambushed in the Kamdesh Valley. The radio crackled with urgency, voices laced with fear. Harris bent over the tactical display as reports poured in. Enemy fighters, entrenched in the high ridges, firing down with heavy machine guns. The convoy was pinned in a textbook kill zone. "Phantom Base, this is Eagle 6. The transmission cut through the static. "We've got multiple wounded. Enemy positions on the ridgeline, 930 to 1,200 meters out. We can't move without getting shredded. Request immediate support." The operations room erupted. Officers scrambled, maps unfolded, coordinates shouted across the room. 2 Apache helicopters were spinning up, but Harris's gut told him they wouldn't make it in time. The convoy didn't have 15 minutes to wait. They had 5, maybe less. Then he heard it, the calm, steady voice that cut through the panic. "Major, I can get eyes on from the northwest observation post. Elevation's perfect, clear line of sight to the ridge." Every head turned. Keller was already in full kit, Barrett case slung over her shoulder, helmet clipped under her arm. She hadn't asked permission. She was informing them. Major Peterson frowned. "That's over 2 clicks away. Terrain's rough. You'll never make it before they're overrun." Keller's reply was as steady as her breathing. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. 5 more to range targets. That convoy doesn't last without sniper cover." It wasn't just confidence in her voice. It was inevitability, as if she already saw the outcome. Harris stepped forward. "Staff Sergeant, what's the furthest confirmed you've hit with that rifle?" For the first time since he'd met her, Keller hesitated. She studied him, as though weighing whether he deserved the truth. Finally, her words came low and deliberate. 3,200 meters, confirmed by 3 observers. The room went silent. A few officers shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they should believe her. Harris didn't need to. He saw it in her eyes. "Then get moving," he said. Keller nodded once, clipped her helmet on, and left without another word.
Minutes later, Harris stood over the tactical map, watching her GPS beacon crawl steadily toward the observation post. The convoy was still under fire, calls for medics breaking through the comms, the sound of gunfire echoing in the background. The enemy had picked their ground well, jagged ridges funneling every rescue attempt into a shooting gallery. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. Keller's voice came through, calm despite the steep climb. "ETA 15 minutes. Advise convoy to hold positions and conserve ammo." Lieutenant Collins, trapped with the convoy, didn't sound convinced. 15 minutes? We don't have 15 minutes. We're losing men out here. Keller's voice never wavered. "You hold, Lieutenant. I'll do the rest." Harris felt the tension in the room shift. Some of the younger officers rolled their eyes. A woman sniper? Running across rough terrain with a 50-pound rifle, promising to hold back an entire ambush? It sounded insane. But Harris recognized the undercurrent in her tone. She wasn't promising. She was stating fact. Through binoculars on the command deck, Harris caught the faint glint of steel as Keller crested the ridge. She moved like she belonged there, low and steady, slipping between rocks until she found her perch. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. I have visual on 4 enemy firing positions. Range to nearest 930 meters. Furthest 1,260. Wind steady 4 to 6 miles per hour southwest. Conditions favorable." Her words were clinical, professional, yet the silence that followed was electric. Harris realized he was holding his breath. Everyone else in the room was too. "Overwatch 1, Major Peterson asked carefully, can you engage at those ranges?" A pause. Then the calm reply, "Affirmative. Engaging now." The room fell deathly still. Harris leaned closer to the radio, straining for any sound. At these distances, seconds stretched into eternity. And then it came, the crack of the Barrett rolling across the mountains like thunder. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. First target down." The tension broke for half a heartbeat before climbing even higher. Because if she could hit one, she could hit them all. The convoy below began to cheer, but Harris stayed tense. He knew this wasn't over. Keller had just announced her presence to the enemy, and the next shot would decide whether she was a legend or a ghost. The echo of that first shot rolled through the valley like a warning bell. Dust kicked up from the ridge where the enemy fighter had stood seconds before. His comrades scrambled, shouts rising, gunfire stuttering as they tried to understand what had just happened. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. Keller's voice crackled through the radio, calm as ever. "Second target acquired, adjusting for cover." Harris gripped the edge of the table, eyes locked on the tactical display. He'd seen snipers work before, seen them line up shots, calculate wind, squeeze triggers. But Keller was different. She wasn't rushing, wasn't second-guessing. Every breath, every pause felt measured. It wasn't bravado. It was science wrapped in discipline.
The second report of the Barrett thundered. A half-beat later, Lieutenant Collins' voice broke in from the convoy. "Whoever's watching over us, keep going. We see enemy pulling back from eastern flank." Cheering echoed faintly through the comms. Soldiers pinned in the valley were lifting their heads, daring to believe. Harris allowed himself a breath, but only one, because he knew this fight was far from done. When a sniper reveals their position, the battlefield changes, and now the enemy knew death was watching them. On the ridge, Keller shifted positions by inches, tucking deeper behind stone. Her breathing slowed, controlled. The world through her scope narrowed. Wind, distance, movement. She ignored the chaos of gunfire, the frantic calls on the radio. All that mattered was the silhouette, half hidden behind jagged rock, muzzle flashes betraying his position. She made a small correction, whispering numbers only she could hear. A breath in, a pause, trigger squeeze. The third shot ripped through the valley. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, target neutralized, remaining hostiles scattering to dead ground. In the ops room, Major Peterson leaned toward the radio. Overwatch 1, maintain eyes, report fallback pattern. Keller's reply came steady, but Harris caught the edge beneath it. Focus so sharp it cut. They're moving north toward the ravine, predicting choke point at 1,400 meters. Permission to engage as they funnel? Peterson hesitated. 1,400 meters was no easy shot. Most snipers struggled past 1,000, but Harris cut in before doubt could poison the moment. Permission granted. Do what you need to do. Minutes crawled like hours. Harris tracked her beacon, watched her crawl forward, adjusting for a better angle. On the screens, the convoy began its slow extraction, moving broken vehicles, carrying wounded. They were exposed, vulnerable, every shadow a potential gun barrel. Then Keller's voice returned, clipped and professional. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, multiple targets in the ravine, range 1380, armed tactical formation, requesting permission to engage. Confirmed hostile? Confirmed. Engage at your discretion. Silence. Harris leaned closer, heart pounding in time with the radio static. Then the Barrett cracked again, echoing like a hammer on stone. Overwatch 1, first hostile down. Enemy formation disrupted. Another pause, then a second thunderclap. Overwatch 1, second hostile neutralized. They're scattering. On the convoy channel, Collins' relief was audible. Phantom Base, Eagle 6 were clear of the ambush site, moving toward extraction. Cheers erupted in the ops room. Officers exchanged glances of disbelief. One sniper holding back an entire ridgeline, buying an entire convoy their survival. But Harris didn't cheer. He watched the display, jaw clenched, because he knew what came next. In war, the first ambush is never the last. And right on cue, Keller's voice returned, this time sharper, urgent. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, secondary enemy force inbound on the western approach. 8 to 10 fighters, heavy weapons. They're setting for the bridge crossing. The ops room fell silent. Harris's stomach dropped. The bridge was the only way out. If the enemy secured the high ground there, the convoy would be trapped in another kill zone, this time with no escape. Range to targets, Peterson demanded. Estimate 1,600 meters, still moving. I need to reposition for clean sight lines. ETA 12 minutes. The convoy was 8 minutes from the bridge. Everyone in the room realized it at once. The math didn't work. Harris grabbed the radio. Overwatch 1, if you can't make those shots, say it now. There was a pause, long enough for Harris to feel the weight of every life hanging on the answer. Then Keller's voice, calm but edged with iron. Sir, I'll make them, but understand this will be at the absolute edge of what's possible with the Barrett. Harris closed his eyes, knowing he was gambling an entire convoy on one woman and one rifle. And for the first time in years, he prayed she wasn't exaggerating. The convoy's engines growled through the valley as battered vehicles pushed toward the bridge. Every wounded soldier inside knew the crossing ahead was a choke point, one last gauntlet before safety. And every officer inside the operations room knew the enemy wasn't done yet. Overwatch 1, status. Harris's voice was sharp, almost too sharp. Heavy static filled the air, then Keller's steady tone. Moving to alternate position, 3 minutes out. Ridgeline will give me sight on the bridge approach. Targets will be inside 1,800 meters. Peterson muttered under his breath. 1,800? That's beyond doctrine. Harris ignored him. Doctrine didn't matter anymore. The only thing between the convoy and annihilation was a woman running with 50 pounds of steel strapped to her back, climbing rocks that broke lesser soldiers in minutes. If she failed, 50 lives would vanish in the span of a heartbeat. Through the ops room's forward screen, drone footage flickered. Enemy fighters were already crawling into Overwatch positions above the bridge. A PKM machine gun was being mounted on a tripod, its barrel pointed toward the road below. Harris's gut clenched. Once that gun opened up, the convoy wouldn't make it 10 meters. "Keller, talk to me," he barked into the comms. Her breathing came through the headset, steady despite the sprint. "Almost there. 15 more meters. Setting up." Then silence. Seconds stretched. Harris imagined her lying flat against the ridge, unpacking the Barrett, adjusting bipod legs, locking in scope levels, all while the convoy rolled closer to its death. Finally, her voice again, calm, clinical. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. Visual acquired. Range 1,827 meters. Wind variable, northwest 8 to 12 miles per hour. Mirage patterns confirmed thermal rise. Not ideal, but workable." "Overwatch 1, Harris said carefully. "You are under no obligation." Her interruption was soft, but absolute. "Sir, I didn't climb up here to watch them die." The Barrett thundered, the sound delayed by the sheer distance, echoing across valleys and bouncing back like rolling thunder. Every officer in the ops room leaned forward, straining for her next words. "Overwatch 1, impact 2 meters low, 1 meter left, adjusting." Harris's stomach dropped. A miss. Not unexpected at that range, but costly. The enemy crew flinched, then scrambled faster, realizing death was close. They had seconds to finish locking the PKM into place. "Overwatch 1, assessment," Harris demanded. "They think the shot came from closer. They're scanning the wrong ridges. I still have window." Her tone was precise, unfazed. "Second shot in 30 seconds. Harris's knuckles whitened around the radio. He hadn't prayed since his first deployment, but now the words whispered unbidden. "Please." 30 seconds later, the Barrett cracked again. This time, silence, the kind that stretched and threatened to crush lungs. Then, Keller's voice. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, machine gun position neutralized." The room erupted in cheers. Officers slapped backs, exhaled relief. Harris didn't move. He knew better. The enemy never sent one crew, and he was right. "Overwatch 1, Keller's voice returned, urgent. Secondary teams moving to alternate positions. Estimated range 1,900 meters. 3 groups, overlapping fields of fire. If they set, convoy will be trapped." The celebration died instantly. Peterson whispered what everyone was thinking. 1,900? Those are record book distances. Harris answered without hesitation. "Do whatever you can, Overwatch 1. Buy them time." On the ridge, Keller shifted again, pulling her cheek tight to the stock, scope reticle hovering over shadows of men who thought themselves safe. She calculated bullet drop, nearly 15 feet. Flight time, almost 5 seconds. Too long, too many variables. But she steadied her breathing anyway. Crack. The Barrett roared. First hostile disrupted. They're scattering. Another shot, harsher this time. Her voice clipped with concentration. Second group repositioning, missed by half a meter, forcing relocation. Third shot. Dust bloomed around rocks near the enemy's position. Chaos followed. Fighters broke cover, running from an enemy they couldn't even see. The convoy commander's voice broke through, full of disbelief. "Phantom Base, Eagle 6, we're across the bridge, clear of danger." Cheers filled the ops room again, this time louder. Soldiers who had been writing off the convoy minutes ago now shouted Keller's call sign like a lifeline. But Harris didn't cheer. He watched her beacon still flashing on the ridge, and knew legends aren't made by surviving once. They're made by what comes next. As the convoy cleared the valley, Harris's headset buzzed one last time. Keller's voice, steady but edged with fatigue. "Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, area not clear. I'm observing another force moving from the western spur. Heavier weapons. If they cut me off before extraction, I'll be pinned. Harris's throat got dry. She had saved the convoy. Now the question was whether anyone could save her.
The valley had fallen quiet, but Harris knew it was the kind of quiet that meant danger, not peace. The convoy was safe, but Keller was still on the ridge, and now she was the only target left. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, her voice came steady through the static. I count 12 moving from the western spur, heavy weapons, RPGs in play. If they push, they can pin me before I move. The ops room stiffened. She'd held the line for everyone else, and now the fight was turning on her. Apaches are 7 minutes out, Major Peterson snapped. 7 minutes is forever when they're hunting you, Keller replied flatly. Harris leaned into the mic. What do you need, Sergeant? Space, and a few rounds to make them doubt every step. On the ridge, Keller crawled from her nest, dragging the Barrett with practiced silence. She shifted 10 meters downslope, set the bipod, and scanned. Fighters moved carefully, probing, trying to find her. They knew a sniper was out there, but not where. Wind steady. Range 1650, she whispered, voice calm as stone. Then she fired. The Barrett cracked. One fighter dropped instantly. The rest froze, scanning the wrong rocks, unsure where death had come from. Overwatch 1, hostile neutralized. Remaining elements cautious, Keller reported. The enemy answered with blind fire. Rounds sparked off stone near her last position, RPG trails cutting through empty air. They weren't sure yet, but they were getting closer. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, Keller said quickly. They're trying to box me in, divert the convoy south. If they think I'm still here, I'll buy them time. Peterson snapped, Negative, you're not bait, Sergeant. Harris cut him off. Do it. Keller moved again, crawling higher, sweat streaking her dusty face. The Barrett dug into her shoulder as she found her angle. Another silhouette shifted between rocks. Range 1780, drop 50 feet, she squeezed. Another fighter crumpled. Overwatch 1, tally 2, she confirmed. In the ops room, relief flickered. Harris saw more than relief. He saw disbelief. Half the officers were watching a woman make shots beyond what doctrine even trains for. The convoy was safe, but Keller was writing her own death sentence with every round she fired. Enemy forces adjusted fast. More muzzle flashes blinked from the ridge. They were moving wider, working angles, trying to close in. Keller fired again, missed by inches. Dust exploded near her target, forcing them back. She shifted immediately, resetting her position before they could track her. Overwatch 1, status, Harris called. Her breathing came steady. 5 confirmed. They're stalling. It was true. The enemy advance faltered. Even so, Harris stared at her lone beacon on the map, surrounded by red markers. She was holding an entire force at bay, alone. Then her voice returned, quieter this time. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1, ammunition low, 4 rounds left. The room went silent. Harris felt the weight of her words. 4 bullets between her and being overrun. And he realized something grim. This fight wasn't about saving the convoy anymore. It was about whether Staff Sergeant Keller would live long enough to fire those last 4 shots. The ridge was alive with movement now. Through her scope, Keller saw enemy fighters shifting like shadows, trying to close in before she vanished. Her thumb brushed over the magazine release. Light. Too light. 4 rounds left. That was all. Phantom Base, Overwatch 1. Ammunition check, 4. They'll keep pressing. Harris's throat tightened. Around him, the ops room was buzzing with tension. 4 bullets against 12 men armed with rockets and machine guns.
He wanted to tell her to hold back, to hide, to wait for the Apaches, but Keller's voice left no room for hesitation. "Sir, I didn't come up here to hide." She exhaled slowly, sighted on the nearest figure. Range 1680. Wind shift, small, but enough to throw the shot. She corrected, squeezed. The Barrett cracked. The man pitched forward, weapon tumbling from his hands. Overwatch 1, target neutralized. 3 rounds. The others flinched, ducking lower. Then, as if realizing her magazine was finite, they surged. Muzzle flashes stitched the rocks around her. Stone chips bit into her cheek. She rolled, pulled the Barrett against her chest, and crawled to new cover. Her pulse never spiked. She'd done this dance before. Range 1720, adjusting for crosswind. Another shot boomed. A second body slumped, blood smearing down the slope. 2 rounds left. In the command center, Harris gripped the radio so tight his knuckles went white. "Apaches are 3 minutes out. Just hold them a little longer." Keller's reply was calm, almost faint. 3 minutes is forever out here. Legends aren't made when the odds are even. They're made when there's nothing left but will. She spotted a third fighter creeping high along the rocks, trying to flank. He thought he was clever, staying low, belly flat against stone. Keller tracked him through her reticle, waiting until his head rose an inch too high. Crack! The Barrett roared. Silence followed. 1 round. The radio hissed with static. Enemy gunfire roared louder. They were desperate now, pushing all at once. Keller flattened behind her rock, chambering her last round. Sweat dripped into her eyes. She blinked it away. 1 shot left, and more targets than she could count. Through the scope, she picked the one who carried the RPG. He was the real threat. If he fired, she wouldn't survive the blast radius. She steadied her breathing, counted the rhythm of her heart, and squeezed. The shot echoed like thunder rolling through the valley. The RPG carrier spun and collapsed. The survivors broke, scattering, shouts echoing in panic. "Phantom base, Overwatch 1, last round expended, enemy in retreat." The room erupted in cheers. Harris stayed frozen, headset pressed tight, praying she'd say more. Then her voice returned, softer, edged with exhaustion. "Be advised, I'm still exposed. Extraction required." At that moment, the roar of Apache rotors thundered through the valley. Harris saw the drone feed, 2 gunships sweeping over the ridges, rockets streaking into fleeing fighters. The ambush melted in seconds. "Keller, sit tight. You've got air cover," Harris said, finally letting the breath out of his chest. For the first time, her voice carried something human, a faint laugh. About time. Hours later, when she finally stepped back into the operations center, dust still clinging to her uniform, the room went silent. Soldiers who had dismissed her now stared as though they were looking at a ghost. Harris met her eyes and saw no pride, no arrogance, just fatigue, discipline, and something else, acceptance. He pulled her file onto the table. "Staff Sergeant Keller," he said quietly, "your record doesn't mention anything about Task Force Black, about long-range eliminations, about 47 confirmed kills." She didn't deny it. She simply set the Barrett case down and replied, "Sir, I did my job. Today, I just did it again." The room stayed silent. Harris realized then what made her different. She wasn't chasing recognition. She wasn't seeking glory. She was carrying the burden of impossible shots so others could live. As she walked out, Harris looked down at the file again, still sanitized, still empty, and he knew the truth would never fit inside those pages, because Elena Keller wasn't just a soldier. She was a legend written in silence, and a sniper whose story had only begun.